And welcome back to STL TV Live. I'm Ivy Hartman, and joining me now in the studio is Steve Peirce, president of Christmas in St. Louis. Now, even though you have the title president, we want everybody to realize this is a volunteer gig. I mean,
absolutely. Everybody, it's an all-volunteer organization.
And you do some great work. Starting with, we're going to talk a little about what's coming up in terms of Christmas in St. Louis. Right. But in case you missed it this year, we want to know what you missed just a week ago, what Christmas in St. Louis was actually getting kicked off here in St. Louis. What were you guys up to? We
started with the Macy's Festival of Lights, where we lit up city gardens and had about 3,000 or 4,000 people come down to the city gardens. We had Circus Flora performing, did some fire acts and magical acts. Next thing you know, in comes the Grinch that stole Christmas from the Peabody. He was there. A lot of just family fun, big fluffy mascots from the pro football teams and everything else. And just a fun family evening followed by a great fireworks display and a parade over to Macy's when it was over.
So now, not to rub salt in the wounds that in case that you weren't of the 3,000 or 4,000 people that were there, but I was happy to know this because I'd like to put it on my calendar for next year. So it typically happens the week before Thanksgiving.
The Friday night, 1 week before Thanksgiving, is when it's typically held.
Well, you know what? It makes me happy to know that we've got so many wonderful family-friendly events here in St. Louis, you know, starting all year round, but really starting this time of year. So coming up for Thanksgiving Day, Christmas in St. Louis is also continuing its efforts with some more festivities.
Absolutely. We're doing our 27th annual Thanksgiving Day Parade. We're thrilled to have Ameren, Missouri as our sponsor. They're our title sponsor and lead sponsor. We've got over 120 units that are going to be in the parade this year. Schnucks and U.S. Bank will be sponsoring a Battle of the Bands with about 10 or 12 top high school bands that will compete each year in that event. And we've got about a dozen of the huge helium balloons like you would typically see in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
That's fun. So the details, parade starts at 8:45. It'll start at 4th and Washington. And if you want more information, you go to christmasinstlouis.org. It's funny, Steve, that you should mention the big balloons.
Right.
Okay, because I think that was a big part of my husband's life before we got married and had children. He used to actually be one of those anchors of those people who held down the balloons during the parade, because I know that those are also all volunteers as well. Different organizations sponsor the different balloons.
Different organizations sponsor the balloons, but we reach out to the community to get volunteers to walk in the parade. And the balloon handlers, which we usually use about 350 to almost 400 balloon handlers, because it takes 35 to 50 volunteers per balloon. This year it looks like the wind is going to be very calm, but when it is windy, it is a challenge.
We can hope, we can hope. That is a very comprehensive parade, and you're going to have a couple different organizations being able to be highlighted in the parade in terms of where your grand marshals, but then also some nonprofit organizations.
Right. It's all about the children's and the children's charities. And this year our two winners are the Miriam Foundation, which we'll be making cash donations to, and Academy St. Louis. And those two charities will receive cash as well as a nice television commercial, if you will, about highlighting some of the wonderful work that they do all year with the children and to help the St. Louis community.
And you know, there's some new things that you may have never seen at Christmas in St. Louis Parade on Thanksgiving Day. And we're going to tell you more about what those surprises are when we come back in a minute. We're going to keep Steve around to hang out with us and tell us a little bit more about the Thanksgiving Day Parade and more about Christmas in St. Louis. We don't want you to go anywhere because we've got more coming up. But you can keep up with other great events happening here in St. Louis by friending us on Facebook, following us on Twitter, or subscribing to our YouTube channel. And you know, we're always streaming live on STLTV.net. Did you know that?
.net. Yes, I do.
Okay, you do, and Steve commits to sharing that with all his family and friends this holiday. All right, don't go anywhere. We'll be back with Steve in just a minute.